The United Nations Children's Fund, together with the South African Human Rights Commission, released a report detailing their progress and disparities among children in South Africa. A lot of stark realities are detailed in that report, and among them, the fact that a black child is more likely to die before the age of 1 as compared to a white child. To unpack the report for us this morning, we joined by Sudeshan Reddy, who is from Unicef in South Africa, and he joins us from our studios in Hatfield. Sudeshan, good morning to you and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Palesa, and good morning to the viewers.
Thank you so much for coming through. Talk to us about the report as to how it was researched and compiled.
Palesa, the report was compiled by Unicef and the South African Human Rights Commission using data from various government departments, from Statistics South Africa, and from non-governmental organizations, think tanks, and research organizations. We also used the data from the 2011 census. This data has been publicly available for a while now. Nothing is secretive about it. And it is a compilation of a very diverse selection of very relevant information.
Yeah, and of course a lot of realities are detailed in this report. Let us just focus a little bit on something that's mentioned on the report, and it is actually the fact that a black child is 5 times more likely to die before their first birthday as compared to a white child.
You know, South Africa remains one of the most unequal societies in the world by virtue of the history of this country. So gaps and inequalities do exist between urban and rural, between black and white, between female-headed households and male-headed households. So yes, the number of people, more black people live in poverty in South Africa. So logically, more children, black children, live in absolute poverty than white children. I should add that the gap is narrowing, that through the child support grant and other initiatives by government and other partners, the gap is narrowing. But the reality is there are more black children than white children in poverty in South Africa today.
Yeah, but how quick is the gap narrowing? Are we likely to see any changes, Sudanisha, as soon as possible?
I think we are already seeing changes. I'll give you an example. Today, 19.7 million children, the report says, in South Africa are on the child support grant, meaning that the number of children living in absolute poverty or facing hunger every day is the lowest it has ever been. So the number of black children in this country that have access to some sort of financial support is lower. Logically, that also means that the gap will narrow, is narrowing, that fewer children are going to bed hungry. And another important statistic, Palesa, is that in 2002, 7% of children, black children largely in South Africa, had access to early childhood development. In 2015, 49% of children, black children in South Africa, had access to early childhood development. So one is seeing a decreasing of the gap. When that gap will be completely narrowed, I can't tell you exactly, but the statistics are encouraging. Of course, there's a lot more to do.
Yeah, it looks like there is indeed hope. But let's just take a look at sexual violence. It is highlighted in the report as one of the biggest concerns, affecting children.
Absolutely. The levels of violence in South Africa against children is high, disturbingly high. As always with the gaps and inequalities we've spoken about, it is girls who are more vulnerable. It is children in poorer communities who are more vulnerable. It is children who don't have access to social workers and community support that are more vulnerable. So sexual violence is something that UNICEF, with the government and other partners, is tackling through various interventions. I should also add that the statistics are alarming because South Africa is also among the most transparent countries in the world when it comes to putting out the statistics. So it's really a call to action for all of us to work a lot harder to try and end the scourge, to combat it. UNICEF's very visible in terms of campaigns against sexual violence, against children particularly. It's something that concerns us. We've just ended the 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children. That was a call to action. Let's hope that more action will be taken. Reporting rates are up, and that's encouraging. More children's abuses are being reported. More action is being taken. Is it enough? No. But it's a call to action to do more.
Yeah, it's very much worrying. It is worrying because it looks like more children are becoming prone to rape and molestation as well.
Palesa, I'm not sure if it's more children or if it's just that we're hearing about it more, and through outlets like Morning Live and media, we're able to highlight it. It's certainly disturbing. We just have to open the newspapers daily and look at these horrific cases that are taking place throughout the country. We need to continue to work with police, with criminal justice authorities, with social workers, with traditional leaders, with religious organizations, as Unicef does, to basically push the agenda that sexual violence against children needs to be stamped out, and by stamping it out, we talk about it, we highlight it, and we collectively end it.
And it is indeed encouraging. I mean, if we look at the number of cases that are being reported lately, so it looks like there is light at the end of the tunnel at the end of the day.
We hope so,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. On to education now, Sudeshan. There is still a massive divide if you were to take into consideration the urban as well as rural education.
Absolutely. Palesa, the gaps in education, again, are a legacy of the past of this country, a very long and divisive past that 22 years can't easily undo. Again, UNICEF works with the Department of Basic Education and various organizations to support education for children through early childhood development stimulation activities, through supporting farm schools to some extent, because let's not forget, as you said, children in rural areas are sometimes more disadvantaged. We work with corporate partners to basically fund initiatives to promote water and sanitation in schools, so more children in schools have access to water and sanitation, which of course also impacts on education. And I think it's also important to work on safety in schools, which UNICEF is actively involved with, making schools a safe zone for children in communities where there is violence or abuse of some sort.
Yeah, talking about safety, I actually wanted to come to that issue. Talk to us about the progress that South Africa has made in terms of safety of children in this country.
Through various initiatives, and UNICEF supports one particular program called the Isibindi program in the Eastern Cape and other provinces, where we train community social workers working with the Department of Social Development who help children in vulnerable positions. For instance, child-headed households, which are a reality in this country. They are assisted with various tasks and support that makes their life that bit easier. Through the Child Support Grant, which UNICEF actively encourages government to continue and is very much part of, we alleviate the worst conditions that children in vulnerable communities face. It is improving, like I said earlier, but there is still room for improvement. The interventions by government and others, there's also the foster care grant, of which nearly 500,000 children are on it, which supports community support to children. And UNICEF firmly believes that that is the way to go, to support communities, to support vulnerable children as well.
Now, a quick one on this one, Sudeshan. Here is the report, of course, highlighting worrying factors. What is next? Are there perhaps any recommendations on the report?
Sorry, Palesa, I didn't hear you clearly.
Are there any recommendations emanating from this report?
There are several recommendations, Palesa, that involve how we can collectively meet the challenges that are put forward in the report. Because let's not forget, the report says progress and disparities. So it highlights the progress, but it does make recommendations on how we can lessen the disparities, be it in terms of better reporting on sanitation conditions in schools, or better investment in early childhood development for children in rural areas particularly, in terms of campaigns to end sexual violence, especially against young girls. So the report is full of very concrete recommendations that are a product of various consultations.
All right, that's where you're going to leave it for this morning, but thank you so much for your time. That was Sudeshan Reddy from UNICEF in South Africa talking to us about the report released that details the progress and disparities among children here in South Africa. The report was compiled by UNICEF and the South African Human Rights Commission. We take